Welcome to iAMradio, and it's not AM where I live right now, but it might be where you live, and well, that's not really the meaning of it anyhow. So I want to thank everyone who's participated thus far. It's really fun for me to have people in the audience commenting, questioning, sharing, so please don't hesitate to shout. My objective for today is to talk to the role. I think where I'm going to start is how you determine how you feel and what that process looks like, and maybe talk a little bit about the main point. But for what? But for why? Why are we even doing this? Why care? And if there's anything that you definitely want to talk to, let me know. So, we live our little human lives, and sometimes we live them with a lot of velocity, and sometimes hey Ryan, and sometimes we are so busy trucking one direction or another that we might have forgotten why. Maybe we even never asked why. And why is a very important question. And you can come at it from a few different angles. The angle that I'd like to come at it is called the deep why. And who knows, maybe Tony Robbins taught me this 10 years ago. But he said, I have to write backwards to play. He or someone said you have to keep asking why till you get to the real why. And if you question anything you're doing, ultimately the why, the whyest why is because it feels good, or rather you think it would feel good. So if you're just joining what I'm talking about, that's right, girl. Okay. If you're just joining, I'm looking at the role that interpretation plays in making you feel some type of way and why that matters. So, I ask about your why, your deep why, because this is a game changer. If you can zero in on that, your ultimate objective in all things you're trying to do is so that you feel some level of relief, peace, connection, and health, then if you're doing something and you're not feeling that, then you can ask why. Do I not have to write backwards here? Oh, I wrote upside down, but not backwards. I've been practicing. Let me see if I can do this a different time. Okay, which is to say, so let's say you have an inner objective. You want to heal. You want to get over your daddy issues. Or let's say you have an outer objective. I need to get my beach body back. Or maybe you think like, if I was contributing more to the world, and you're not. So you have where you are right now and where you think you should be. And this space in between is making you feel all types of way that aren't your end state's objective, the deep why for being there. So your why for trying to get somewhere is so that you feel peace, relief, what it's like, happiness as yourself, freedom, all these things. And you've tied it to an end state. You say, when these things, when I'm that, when they're like that, then I'll feel. But it's so crazy. Feeling is relative, and it's relative to the meaning that you assign. And you know that because people of varying circumstances can feel all types of way. You might have somebody who has $5. You might have some who feels rich because that's more than they usually have. So their feeling is about the $5, but it's how they interpret the $5 that makes them feel rich. Similarly, you might have somebody who has $5 million and they're like, I'm feeling so poor. So you see that it's not the thing, it's how you feel about the thing. And I've said this a few times. I can't remember if I've said it on this channel or not. I've been blessed to get a lot of the things that I thought I needed to feel some type of way. And I'll tell you, it's not there. The feelings that you have in those places are the feelings that you bring. So what I'm pointing out is often people hold themselves apart from their ultimate end goal feeling, their deep why they're actually trying to do the thing, because, sorry, I'm writing upside down and that's correct, but anyhow. And it's actually the judgment that generates the off feeling that holds them apart from the goal. So you think like, oh, I got to get the goal to feel that way. But it's actually the other way around. And so if you can connect with your innermost, deepermost, biggest why reason for trying to do some type of thing, you can allow yourself to feel it now. And you might say like, Shay, if I do that, then I'll probably not be goal oriented. I'll probably not try at all. Have you tried yet though? What if you let yourself feel confident before you lost the 20 pounds? Do you think that would make it easier to go to the gym? Do you think that would make it easier to be in the health food section of the grocery store? If you weren't judging yourself, do you think maybe and you were applying love to yourself, do you think there would be more of you available to see what actually felt good to you? So what I'm pointing out now is this kind of external confusion where we pin our inner state to external circumstances for the fuck of it. There's no real reason. We only think that we would feel some type of way of achieving it, or we did once. When you allow yourself to connect with the why, like why you really want to do it, and you let yourself feel it now, like you're nicer to the people around you. Your physiology is actually improved, so your brain functions better, your hormones function better, you actually are healthier overall, and so you can think better in achieving your goals. There are all types of reasons for letting yourself feel good about where you are. And in doing that, I'll tell you too, like, if you can't get good where you are, you'll never feel good when you're there. And I'm not trying to like discourage you from achievement and growth. I'm only saying if you can practice being here and loving yourself now, you actually support yourself in growth and change forward. And you kind of allow it energetically. Okay, so how do you do this when what you're looking at seems like it's going wrong or bad? I suggest, I think I told this story already on this channel about the farmer that's like, he loses his horse, his neighbor says it's bad, the horse comes back, brings his friends, neighbor says that's good. One of the new horses kicks the farmer's son, hurts him, neighbor says that's bad. Farmer's son doesn't get drafted for war, like it's good, you know. So what is good or bad is relative. So as time progresses, what you would call something would change. And I think many people can see that in their own personal stories. Usually like this terrible thing that happens yields a lot of great stuff if you let it. And similarly, things that are really good can have like kind of an ugly tail on them. So it's not, and yet like it keeps moving. So nothing is inherently good or bad. It's the frame that you look at it through, and the frame is time, and this frame is perspective. For example, we're here together. Let's say that I do something that hurts your feelings. I, Shaylee, might think that I'm bad. How could I? If I own it, and let's say I did it accidentally. I accidentally am the bad guy in your story. And because I play that role, you do something great. We play off each other in a way that even then, so if I'm the bad guy and it makes you do something great, am I really the bad guy? We have all these different ways to call things good or bad when we don't really know. And it all depends on when and from where you're looking at it. And I think that's really helpful to remember whenever you're growing forward, and one of your biggest blocks is being afraid to make mistakes. So if you make mistakes or you look stupid, maybe you're helping anyhow. Okay, so it's not even that you have to convince yourself about the event that you're looking at in a way that makes you think this is the best thing ever. That might be too far from this is the worst thing ever. Maybe all you go to is, I don't know if this is good or bad, which is true. So you're not convincing yourself of anything, except you're not convincing yourself anymore of the worst, which you don't really know. For example, if it's really raining outside, it's super storming, you might look out, and if you don't know that storm's end, you might think that like the world is ending. But if you knew that storms watered, like filled the water table and, fed the animals and stuff, you could look out at the storm and say like, all right, that's okay. Like, it'll be done soon. My main point in pulling out this part of it is to say that you make yourself feel some type of way by whether or not you call what's happening good or bad. And you call what's happening good or bad because of your ideas, and you don't know. That can be really unsettling to a lot of people, because how do you navigate if you don't know if something is good or bad? Well, you have an intention or a vision, and you have awareness of the other, and you think like, okay, what's the best choice that I can make forward? What's holistic? What considers all the pieces of myself in time and space and others in time and space? And that might seem like a big calculation, and it is. In which case, because you can't really know what's good or bad, it seems like make sure you're not hurting anybody, and then allow yourself to follow your desire. It seems like all limits are learned. I had a session this morning with a client who wanted to go into some of the stuff on quantum physics. I got into this stuff because I was reading about quantum electrodynamics. You can't, there is no objective reality. It's all subjective. There are no absolutes. And it is actually, it's a little unnerving at first to let that be true, but over time, it's actually really comforting, because your mind is generally trying to figure out at all times, like, what's what. And if you let it know, like, babe, you're not going to be able to know, then it can kind of relax a little. So it's like, let's say that you had a mailbox out front, and if you were constantly like, did the mail come? Did the mail come? Did the mail come? Did the mail come? You don't really chill out. But if you let it be possible that, like, when the mail comes, you'll know, then you can stay in the house and you don't have to keep going out checking. And it's kind of like that. When you come to terms with the limits of thinking, then you're not racing around trying to figure something out. Let's see what else. Is there anything anybody wants to go to or talk to? I'm really here just to practice. My main point here is, okay, so why would I care? Why am I sharing this with you? Because in your awareness of yourself and your good feeling and you being connected to your why and what is real, likely you'll feel more grounded and safe. And when you feel that way, when somebody is responding or reacting or doing something that isn't grounded, you have the space to be like, hey, wait, no. And you can interrupt and ripple out, essentially, like, this is how I perceive that the world will change through self-love, where we have the awareness to say, like, this is what really matters. What really matters is that we're kind to each other. And then no matter whatever's happening, if you can connect with what really matters and you respond from that place, then that reality in that world builds. And what else? I think, so Paul, you can leave whenever you want. I won't know. What was I talking about? my other main point today. So I guess this is more mechanical. This is stuff that is on the ground. It's like, to me, on the ground is basically like, you don't need to allow for any non-physical, metaphysical, esoteric, anything for these things to be true. They're very grounded by being, you can use logic to conclude what I've shared today, which means you don't have to have faith in some unknown power. You can basically point out what's not real in a way that pushes you more towards living the mystery. It's sort of saying, like, the things that you think you're doing with your mind, you can't. And because your mind is the source of most of your anxiety and the stuff that sucks, it's okay to steer away from it because those things aren't real. So it would kind of be like if you were trying really hard to clean your car and you're like scrubbing, and you think that's what's going to do it. And I say, like, no, like, look, it's not working. And your arm's getting really tired, but you put it down and step back, the rainwater will get it. And so I'm not stopping you from doing anything that's working. I'm only pointing out that it's not doing what you think. I'm only pointing out that it doesn't do what you think it does. And again, that kind of comes down to this, this then opportunity to feel peace, because you're not constantly judging things. Judging things to me doesn't mean only saying something's good or bad. It also means saying you know what something is or what something means. And I've been in this world for a long time, so I can miss some steps when I'm talking about when I'm over here and saying nothing's real, nobody knows. It took several steps to get to that place, to see that, again, in a very grounded, logic-driven way, like kind of like proof of reality. Those things are true, but there are things along the way you don't need to surrender, but you can't take with you to allow for those. So it's kind of like your ideas of specialness, your ideas of how things work, or how you'll be safe, or how other people are special, or like all of those things you can't take with you into freedom. You got to put them down. And I clung to a bunch of things on my way. It was like I had like really large suitcases and there was a very tiny door, and I was like, no, I can get this through. And I think I got stuck in the door for a while. So it's basically to say what you are surrendering, again, kind of like the example of cleaning the car and finding it's not doing anything. You're not actually surrendering anything except your illusion that you're like, that something is happening, that you're doing something. An example of that would be many people are trained to be nice, and they might be trained to be nice in a way that isn't nice to themselves. So they go out of alignment with their own truth. They go out of alignment with what feels good to them to be nice. And so they withhold information from the other party to be nice. When you give up being nice, you think that you're giving up friendship. You think that you're giving up closeness, but you're actually giving up the barrier to friendship, to closeness, because when you're nice and out of your own truth, you're not being transparent, you're not actually being connected to anybody. They're being connected to like a facade of you. And it's not even, what's so funny about shifting your expression, your language, your behavior, your actions to accommodate someone else's, generally you do it without them asking. And so you make guesses about what you think they need. And the guesses that you would make are based on your own needs, and so are likely not even theirs. So you make this adjustment to please them, but you're making the adjustment kind of on guesses. It's kind of like you have a pair of shoes and you want to custom fit it to them, but you custom fit it to your foot you not knowing what their actual foot size is. So there's no information exchange generally and often about what the other person actually wants or needs. You sort of are trained automatically to guess and accommodate. So you suppress your own expression, your own truth to accommodate someone's, what you perceive someone else to need. And so neither, not only are they not connecting with something that feels good to them, but they're not connecting with something that feels good to you. So when you give up being nice, you surrender being nice, all you're really surrendering is the illusion that that's what keeps relationships working. And it doesn't mean be an asshole. It doesn't mean don't be kind. It just means that be mindful of the ultimate point of the relationship, which is generally to connect to another person. And so if the things that you're doing in the container of the relationship to maintain it aren't allowing for your true self or their true self, then are you really relating as you intended? And what's the point? Why are you there? And that comes back to what I opened with today, where I'm saying, know your why. Get connected to your big why, your why. If you don't know that, you might do a bunch of weird stuff just because. Maybe you saw it happen on television. If you do some of this work that I'm talking about, and then you watch some sitcoms, you'll see why you thought that you couldn't be transparent with other people. All the sitcoms basically model hiding information from each other, and it's kind of cute and funny, but it actually precludes true intimacy. So it's they're friends in fear. I used to watch in college season after season of Friends on repeat. And when I watched it after several years in here, I was like, holy shit, all the unnecessary drama for drama's sake. And yet that is how many people have learned to model their lives, because they watch that kind of programming in their formative years and subconsciously picked up you can't say things like that. You can't do things like that. You have to hide this. Don't be honest about that. Make sure they don't know. But that doesn't feel good to anyone. When people feel drained in corporate cultures or family dynamics, it's often because they don't feel free to be themselves. So it's not necessarily what they have to do. It's what they think they have to do. And even in business, I can make a really strong case for authenticity from an efficiency standpoint. If you are using your bandwidth to adjust your natural expression, you're wasting it. And what's wild is that there is some level of self-rejection and self-judgment that is it's so familiar most people can't even see, but they just assume that they couldn't possibly say what they really think or what they really feel. Have you friend zoned someone who you feel close? I'm not sure what you're asking. Can you say it in a different way, please? So with the business example, all of this energy is lost in communication, and there's also a lot of energy lost in the culture by people thinking that they have to front. So the front is draining, and because it's draining, people are actually avoidant of the space, and so wanting people to want to work is actually negatively impacted by people thinking that they have to front, because why would they go somewhere they're not comfortable? So they kind of build up psychological walls and start to avoid this place, and because then they're not wholly present with the work, they're not doing their best work. And it's just wild, because most people in those spaces feel this way, but nobody's some bullshit, right? And they might say it to their peer, they might say it to their friend, but they think that somebody across the board table from them is would be appalled to know that they thought that something was silly, when they likely thought it was silly too. So one of the things I definitely want to do, and I do work with people in business spaces, is what if we remembered we're all humans? What if we remembered that sometimes you're just not into it? what if we remembered that we have lives outside of this, and like bodies and needs and hopes and dreams? Like, are we robots? The human resource is such a crazy word or phrase, such a crazy phrase to describe the role that people play in organizations. Like a human resource. That's wild. It's like paper is a resource. Humans aren't resources. Humans are the whole thing. If there are no humans, like likely eventually there'll be robots, but you have to have, if there are humans, they need to be treated as humans. And so what I've talked about so far, I open by saying, like, be aware of what your why is. If you're doing something, you're a part of something, whatever it is, you have a why. And even if your why is, I have to, get up under it, connect with the deeper why, and use the feelings at the like centermost point of the why to guide your current moment experience. If you're not responding, if you're in a relationship to feel good and to share and build love, and you don't feel love and you don't feel good in the moment, ask some questions. Why is that? And how do you bring that to the moment so that you're responding from that place and actually building out that experience? If you're building from a place of resentment or resistance, like, it's not going to be your best work. So knowing why also helps you say no and say yes, because you have a personal reason for it. It's easy to say, okay, if you don't know what, if you don't, let's say, like, I have some clients who have, like a let's say opportunistic FOMO, where they don't want to miss out on things. And so if you peel that back, you could say, like, well, why don't you want to miss out? Well, I like to be around people. Okay, well, why do you like to be around people? Because it feels good. Well, why does it feel good? Well, I'm connected, I'm sharing, etc. Okay, so they want to feel good, they want to feel connected, they want to be able to share their experience. If they're overscheduled, they can't show up with these things. And so them saying yes to everything is actually them saying no to their main point. See how that works? So just by getting closer to your main point, you can make certain things easier. Knowing that their main point is to have that experience, they can then ask the question, is this choice supportive of my main point? And it takes saying no to an activity to actually be saying yes to their main point, because the next events that they show up at, rested and recharged, they'll be able to offer those things that they couldn't when they were drained. And there are all kinds of things that, like, you might be dragging yourself through because you've like kind of broken off or snapped from your why. And it's also a lot easier to communicate with other people when you have your why close, because they can't move you. It's not, I don't think, in general, I guess some of it's conscious. Even what's conscious wouldn't be the whole way conscious, but people generally have an agenda. And unless they're directly connected to their source, they might confuse you for their source of happiness or their source of money. And if you're not really able to identify why you're doing something, you can kind of like move with their world, move with their requests, move with what they're offering or requesting, and that might actually deplete your system in a way that ultimately hurts them. So you might be trying to help them or love them, but because you're not aware of where you are and what you're actually needing and doing, it might build up resistance in the system, and then later you deject kind of dramatically, or they don't know why you're mad or upset. So I opened with talking about getting to your why. What is the why under the why, under the why, under the why, under the why? So you might have like a because answer, like, because I want to have this. Well, why? Well, if I have that, I'll feel that. Well, why does that matter? Because, so that's basically what the why chain looks like. And what I found under most behavior, like most things people want, are really just relief, peace, and freedom. Sometimes you cannot on the spot know the why, so I just do it and then put it in a queue for another day to figure out, and it works. Yeah. And so your why there is to be in harmony with what's happening. That's beautiful. And when I find I'm creating, like when I'm doing something brand new, which to me is sort of like an expression of the divine, like I'm following my creativity, there is no, it's more, not just because, but it's kind of like outside of words, outside of understanding. Why do you want to go there? I don't know. That's where I usually find that I'm guided. When I'm pulling out the why in these, it's more in things that people are interacting with from a mental standpoint. And this can help break the grip that obligation or fear holds on people. So if you are feeling good and not in resistance, it opens up greater clarity to receive those kind of impulses and also to make new choices, because you can see the context of the decision more clearly. But thank you for adding that. And then after that, I went and talked about, when we're calling things, so like this is the feeling and why underneath can kind of be an emotional driver, where if you think that feelings come from the outside, if you think that conditions generate your emotional or inner experience, then you'll seek external conditions at the expense of what you truly want. So if you want to feel good and be in alignment, and you're aware of that, you might not make choices or act in a way that would put you in that place later, or where you think you would put in that place later, and wait until you get there. It's kind of like the level of self-rejection that most Western peeps feel is, I think the best word is like pervasive. And you can't know what that's not until you know what that's not. And likely, if you grew up around film and television, you don't know what that is. You have this marker outside of yourself, these ideas about how you could be or should be, this homogenized version of the human that you kind of hold yourself in contempt for not being. A lot of people judge the fuck out of themselves for not being more productive or more this or more that, when that's just how they're built. And so in their uniqueness, they're able to do other things. They might be like productive in seasons. They might be productive in density. They might be productive in different ways than they think productivity looks like. And because they're judging themselves all the time about what they're not doing, they're not available to do what they can do. So when I'm talking about all of these things, these are all expressions of mindfulness, and it's a way to take ownership of your experience, your emotions, your mind, by seeing what's real and what's not real. I talked about how calling things good or bad is learned and relative to a frame. It's limited to time and space. Let's say you order Uber Eats and something happens and they don't deliver. You might think, oh, this is bad. But what if that kitchen had just had like salmonella or something? So you not having the food delivered was actually a good thing, but you may not know that. And so if you live in judgment of what's not working, that's kind of how you feel about stuff. But if you're constantly opening the door and saying like, maybe this is perfect, maybe this is perfect, then it feels that way. And you line up with opportunities and choices that build on that experience. When you say yes to life, like life says yes to you. There are a ton of quotes around how important attitude is. And that's what attitude is. Attitude is saying like, yes and, the improv yes and, I'm gonna take this and go with it, because you really don't know what's good or bad over time. All you have is right now. And so do you want your moment, like you say, it's how do you want to feel right now, not necessarily how do you think this is going to fit in your tapestry of life. You don't know. And not to burst anybody's bubble, but your tapestry is part of another tapestry, everybody's. And so like your tapestry is important, but it's got like you're on the good ship Earth with everybody else, and so how you fit in, your life fits in with everybody else is really, it's like it's not the whole way up to you. And the more that you can surrender to what life is doing through you, or how life is happening, the greater harmony you can be in with the whole tapestry. And when you're in harmony with it, things are a lot easier. It's like running with the wind or against the wind. And a lot of our conditioning out as well is around like shit should be hard. And if you're running with the wind, maybe you're doing something wrong. No, we're just used to thinking that it can't be easy. But if you look at the things that you're best at, if you look at the things that you do uniquely better than anybody else, there is a level of ease and naturalness to it. And it's not to say you don't have to focus your attention or hone those skills through, like, I guess it's effort or exclusion of other opportunities. It's just to say, like, it's kind of natural. It's kind of easy. And when things aren't easy for you, like maybe they're not right for you. I know a lot of people who have a lot of self-judgment on having difficulty reading or with numbers. And they think like, oh, it's bad that I'm like this. But because their brain functions like that, they can do a bunch of other cool stuff that people who are bound by language or bound by numbers can't do. So all of this is to say, when you're looking at something and you call it bad or you say that it's wrong, you don't get to use the upside. And you really don't know if it's good or bad. I've said a few times on this, what you're surrendering on this journey is never the thing. It's just your ideas about the thing. And it's you, to move forward, you don't give up anything, because what you give up is not, it's just how you think that it is. It's always how it is. But you're surrendering why or what or how you, like, what you think it means. Thank you for the absolutely can't agree more comment. Hey Jeremiah, are you over there? Social expectation is a big barrier for most people. Yes, and I find that it is, I guess it's kind of like there's like a physiological or biological component to it, because of, I don't know if it's tribal stuff or survival stuff, but there is something that is terrifying at a level that doesn't really make sense now, that prevents people from claiming their individuality. When a person notices that social expectation is a barrier for them, I start by saying, like, don't fight it, love it. Love it. Appreciate yourself there. Offer yourself inclusion, offer yourself love and acceptance. Ironically, judgment of your experience of social expectation is rejection from not, instead of being fearful of others rejecting you, you're actually rejecting yourself. So if you can sit down with you and say, like, it's okay that you're afraid. It's okay. Eventually you're not afraid anymore. And there is a positive feedback loop in a lot of these things that yield life. You don't really have to do that much to see that the old way doesn't make sense. With demonstrating individuality in groups, there's a huge positive return on investment on that, because you can kind of see other people light up and take hold of themselves after they've been exposed to you doing it. And that's kind of nice to see, like in your own freedom, you free others. You don't have to say shit. You don't have to say shit. Just by being yourself, you open that possibility, because people see, like, oh, that works. And if they have an emotional reaction to it that isn't supportive, if they have an emotional reaction to that's like who they think they is, that's not about you. That's about them. Like, that's their opportunity to see that, like, that rub is information for them. If you're having a negative experience of what somebody is doing, unless they're infringing on your well-being, like actively crossing a line to infringe on your well-being, it's likely because they're reflecting back an element of yourself that you haven't accepted, or that an aspect of yourself that you'd like to develop more, or something you haven't forgiven yourself about. Like, if you're feeling some type of way about what a collective is doing or what an individual is doing, that's usually really good information. Tribal stuff, yes, the community aspect. Yeah, we're working, there's a lot of complexity to all of this where it's multiple things at once. So my specialty is kind of seeing the things under the things under the things under the things, and under all the things it's just you. So I work with myself and others at the level of what information does your current world show us about what you believe to be true or what you expect for yourself, and how is that belief or expectation unreal or limited? All beliefs, anything you can put in words, ain't the thing. It isn't real. Language is a human construct. It didn't come with this. I mean, sort of, because it's vibration, and vibrations create. But basically what I'm saying is, language is descriptive, and then it'll become prescriptive, and then it kind of seems like it's like a relationship is a word to describe two people together, but then later relationship can be used to prescribe behavior. Oh, we're in a relationship, it should look like this. And that's when you abstract from reality into language and concept in a way that impoverishes your ability to actually see and respond to what is in love, because you're responding from ideas and judgment, when what's on the ground might be something that has never been seen before, or like, it's not, all of our abstractions are generally distractions away from what is. And we go into abstraction when we feel afraid to follow ourselves. Indeed, I agree. What I've seen in my personal journey is that once you let go of those barriers and social expectations, most people will outcast you at first. Yeah, I think, I feel you. A lot of what I've, in this iAMradio series, I'm testing the motherfucking waters because a lot of the things that I see are very far away from what is commonly talked about, or how causal relationships are accepted. And it might make me sound crazy, and yet I find that there is a resonance to what I share, where there's kind of a remembrance when it's right for the person, like they recognize what I'm saying. And so it's not really, and I'm not trying to push it on anybody, I'm just sort of expressing to express. It's more like I was judging myself for having this perspective, and I was judging myself based on what I thought my perspective should be. And so coming out, I'm sort of saying, like, it's safe, right? It's okay for me to do this, right? And it feels fucking good to me. And when I do it, I have access to more energy, more information, more life. And so whether or not I'm being responded to at a very clear level by like the tribe that it's right for them, my own health and well-being informs me that like I'm in harmony with what is. Permission to be self and love the tribe. Yes. Amen. And what's really important now, I think, iAMHO, for the people that do have the capacity to be self-aware, is to appreciate those who don't, because most of us didn't. And when we're looking at people doing bad things, what we're seeing is somebody who isn't aware. If they were aware, they wouldn't make that choice, but because they're not aware, they're hurting someone else. And when we come at them in judgment, what we're judging is basically them being asleep. And like, I really don't like the word asleep. It's more like, it's kind of like just being in the dark. So if they're bumping stuff into the dark and you yell at them, they can't see what you say. The only way to do it is to turn up the light, and you turn up the light by providing self-acceptance, because that shit carries. And it's by providing real information on the ground where you trust that it's okay for you to be open about what is real. There's nothing to be afraid of. Light is essentially the same as information. And so when you offer somebody who's bumping around in the dark information about the landscape, it can help them feel more safe. And as they feel more safe, generally they can see better. I don't know if there are limits to this. I've been in the lab with it in personal life a few different times, and I've hit what I think is a ceiling. And so I interpret it as to be like a ceiling inside, but maybe there are limits to people's varying capacities to be aware of the other. I'm not really sure. So in saying that, it's kind of like yes and, where I'm not condoning any behavior that's hurtful to someone else. I'm only pointing out that often in those instances, they don't know that it's hurtful to someone else, or they don't see that being hurtful to someone else actually hurts themselves ultimately. So it's kind of like I try to approach all with love and acceptance, especially those who aren't offering it to me. Good point. But what do you recommend when trying to turn on the light is not well received? That's a good question. I'd ask if you were trying to turn the light on then for you or for them. So if it's a dynamic that you are a part of and the light won't go on, I'd ask, like, is then the light that should go on yours, where you can kind of see that you're free to go? So if you're not in a dynamic that is respectful of you, even when you've showed up to the line and wholeness and like light intention, and it's not responding, then I'd wonder, why do you think that you need to continue? And if we're looking at it at a global level, I look at like where you can't, there's nowhere to go yet. I guess. I do see love and light, as cheesy as it is, rippling outward in a way that is lifting the whole. And there is a vibration or a frequency of fear, like a grid, kind of like a blanket, that holds down humanity's awareness. You can't think at a higher level or perceive at a higher level in fear. And I do see people, like through the work that I've done on Instagram and how I'm connected to individuals all over the world, I do see that light is anchored everywhere, and it is rippling out into families, into neighborhoods, into cities. Like it's kind of like caring. And so in that respect, I'd say, is it judgment that holds you apart from peace and thinking that the light should be the whole way on now? I thought that at one point I needed to run and like flip the switch and like really light the bitch up. But that pressure or that idea prevented me from lighting the places that I actually touch already. So I try to pull in my sphere of influence to what I can actually, like what I have now, and not necessarily all the things that could be done, but what can I do now? And what I can do now is generally accept myself, practice non-judgment in every way, shape, or form, tend to my well-being, and be mindful of my interaction with others, and kind of like sing. So for me, what feels the best, I wrote it somewhere on me today, sing the gospel. I think that's gonna be my next tattoo, where it's kind of like just saying the good word, where it's like, we're okay, everybody's okay. Well, for sure, I didn't want to make it sound like I'm on some high ground, but damn, I've come to the conclusion to let them be, even if I can clearly see they're hurting themselves. Yeah, it's hard. It's in those instances when I see somebody hurting themselves, I'm like, I have to do this kind of with my family in some ways, is I let that be right. So I only think that they shouldn't. I don't, and you can say like, well, harmony and wholeness would mean that they aren't or they shouldn't. But at the same time, we're on unique paths. We're all unfolding in different ways. Who am I to say when they should come to that conclusion? So I'm mindful that I don't let any of that into my world. Like, if they want to live in illusion or whatever, like, that's like, I don't partake. I don't feed into it. If they hand me a piece of information that's wrapped in some kind of bullshit, I'll unwrap it and talk to the stuff inside. I don't need to tell them like all this stuff is unreal. I just talk to what's real and just try to love and accept them for where they are. It is painful when you see that there's another way. But when I take on, it's kind of like I was saying with the moment yesterday or the day before, here's your moment. If you take on how they should feel but they don't, then your moment, it's kind of like you're hurting yourself then. So they would be mirroring that back to you in some ways. I think I'm gonna wrap up soon. I really appreciate your comments. Does anybody else have anything before we go? Are there any topics you particularly like or anything that's particularly helpful? I really get excited. I'm playing around in this format right now to see what's comfortable or fun for me to talk about. My own development, like the things that I'm working on in my lab, or I guess it all comes back to love. It all comes back to love. And that is a word that's actually kind of convoluted and counterproductive in many ways. So when I say it, maybe I come up with another word. To me, it comes back to self-acceptance and what do you think that's hurting you? And is that real? Thank you so much for coming out. I really appreciate it. If you have any topics you'd like me to share or go to tomorrow or the next day, just let me know.